Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today. Hello, and welcome. And my guest this month is, I think, one of the greatest clowns that Britain has produced in the last 30 years. He is fearless, provocative, outrageous, and very, very funny. He's been involved in Told by an Idiot almost from the very beginning, and he predates that. He's worked at theatres including the RSC, the National Theatre, and with companies such as Improbable, and he is the best pal a man could have. Welcome, Stephen Harper.
That's very kind, Paul. Very kind words. Lovely. Thank you very much for that.
Well, you're very welcome. And I'm going to jump straight in because I mentioned some of your illustrious career there, including the National Theatre. And I'm remembering coming to meet you for a pint at the Windmill Pub in Waterloo on the Cut, just down from the National Theatre studio. And on that particular day, you'd been doing the very first R&D, I seem to remember, of a show called Warhorse. And we met at the pub and I said to you, what have you been doing? And you said, I'm doing this thing on a children's book about horses and the war, and Toby Sedgwick's there, and we're playing with some boxes. I don't think it'll amount to much.
I don't remember that. Typical prescience from me. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Finger on the pulse, a kind of West End producer.
No, I enjoyed it, but it was like, who was there? The woman who was the writer from Mamma Mia was there. And Tom Morris and the guys who made the puppets. They're not puppets, they were just people and objects and ladders and spades and stuff. And we just Tom just threw me in and said, improvise some stuff. And we did, so that's where, that's where corned beef croissant, the story in my family about this corned beef croissant that we made at one point in some Easter holidays, because it was too long for the tin, I turned it into a croissant shape. And I told it to the horse to calm it down. And the writer was just bewildered. She said, how have you done that? How have you made it so British and so French and so... have you been preparing for this for a while? And I went, no, it's just a story. She didn't believe it. She dropped out of the project. I put her off by just telling a story that just was...
We will return to the rather successful Warhorse and your involvement later. But first of all, Steve, obviously we know each other very, very well. So I kind of feel I know lots of stuff, but there's probably some surprises for me. But I'm going to take you back to the beginning. And you were born in Billingham, a small industrial town in the northeast, or
not? No, I moved there. I was born in Haverton Hill, which is it's even smaller kind of port. In fact, I've got one of my first memories is like launching a ship. No, I didn't launch the ship, obviously, but the ship launched from kind of Port Clarence, Haverton Hill, and it was like a big thing. There was some royalty there, and I just read that was like a big thing. I was about 4 or 5, maybe. Couldn't trace it back. It's not really there anymore. My sister went to visit her, and she took me back to it, and it's like a field where we used to live. It's just like a field with some cows in. So it's all kind of changed, but she remembers it much better. Well, I moved when I was 8 to Billingham. Yeah, so that's
Billingham, which I obviously associate Billingham very strongly with you, and I visited, of course, in one of our holidays from college. But do you have any kind of early memories of theatre? Did you go to a pantomime, or were you taken to the theatre?
No, I didn't know. I did a bit later on when I showed an interest, but I was mostly in things in primary school. I remember there was the old woman who lived in the shoe. I was one of the kids. Early ensemble role. And then the big one was we did the Plagues of Egypt, and I was one of the...
Wow.
I was one of the Egyptians who had the plagues visited on us by the girls in the year above us. So they would kind of come and nip us. We were just in our shorts. We've got a really strong memory of these purple shorts. And they'd come and nip us, or as they were locusts, or they had big frog's feet. They had flippers. And they used to whack our feet.
I'm quite intrigued both by the production as you describe it, but also the kind of going for the Old Testament thing.
Yeah,
is this typical of your school? Or?
Well, not really. I mean, it was a kind of a Protestant school, so religion wasn't particularly important, I don't think. I mean, that might be a bit controversial, but no, it was not, because it wasn't. We had assemblies and we did all that, but it was very relaxed. It was a very relaxed view of religion, and my family certainly wasn't religious. So,
and do you remember any early kind of going to see anything? What's the early memories of seeing something?
I can't, not really. The ones, because we used to go and see farces and things like that, and I remember really laughing a lot. But I saw a thing called, when I was about maybe 12, on Conduct Unbecoming, which had Donald Sinden in, I think. So I think it was like, and it was kind of, it's a very good film.
Which theatre was this?
It was a Billingham Forum. Yeah, so we kind of and went there, and it was kind of incredibly dramatic and very British and just beautifully done. It was like, I'm not sure if I'd like it now, but I've seen the film, and it's really kind of resonates, that Days of the Raj and all the kind of mystery around it, and all the kind of the very red uniform and the kind of the saris and all the kind of weird, so, but really there's a bit where, I don't want to spoil it for you, but the guy takes his life at the end. It's just beautiful. It's just proper theatre where the lights go down, there's a gunshot, and literally the audience just didn't clap for about 30 seconds of just recovering from this very British thing. And so I remember I got a very taste for the dramatic.
And then I suppose you must have re-encountered Donald Sinden in the classic sitcom Never the Twain.
Yeah, well, I suppose I didn't really watch that very much as much. Obviously, I don't know how they got away with those performances. Very fruity.
No, you couldn't get away with it. You certainly couldn't get away with it now, for good reason. Anyway, so what was the kind of, if it wasn't so much seeing stuff, where did the interest in theatre come from?
Oh, it definitely came from this guy, Andy Murray, who when I went to senior school, he was a New English teacher. So, and we were doing Midsummer Night's Dream, and just kind of everyone was bored, and he was just trying to shake it up a bit. And he was like, I remember there was one bit we read, there's the bit where Puck falls on his bum. We were like amazed. We said, "Can you have bum in Shakespeare?" We had a big debate about saying bum in Shakespeare, because we all thought it was thou and that and this, and therefore all the kind of cliched views that kids have. And then there's a bit where, obviously, in the you played it yourself, where Bottom has the death scene in Pyramus and Thisbe, and he said, "Just go for it." It's just says "die" several times. Go for it. I was quite a shy kid. I didn't really know, and so I just went and I banged my head in the desk like a bit like Joe Pesci or something, and just scraped against the wall and wrote "die" lots, and everyone was just like laughing, but also just stunned. And he went, "I'm starting this youth theatre." And so I just joined, and then that's the kind of every summer. We did a school production every like in the summer, and then we did a youth theatre, and it was always like I usually got a girlfriend and made mates, and it was very different. It was that kind of, because I was quite sporty. I was into the football, but it just took me away from that just pure sporty lads thing. And there's lots of girls there, and lots of just a different bunch of people who were like really creative. We used to write our own plays and devise very early on. We wouldn't do play about. We told the directors we wouldn't do play about madness and about mental illness. Didn't know anything about it. We did a play about the Craig and Bentley case. Very early miscarriage of justice. So all in, supposed to be set in Croydon, but we set it in Middlesbrough, I think. So it was all kind of a bit inaccurate. And also we kind of sentimentalized it hugely. I think the director kind of just wrote all these sentimental letters, which he told us existed, and he lied to us, so we were very let down. But no, we did some plays. We did like, what's that kind of one? Boot and Bert, about the critics who go and see the play and get involved. Real Inspector Hound, we did that. So we did a whole variety of stuff. Yeah, really. I mean, we just had a great time. It was just good fun getting the bus from Billingham to Hartlepool.
Am I right that as you went through school, for your A levels, you did quite a mix of things? Didn't you do A level maths?
Yeah, I did maths, physics, and chemistry. I mean, I think people were trying to desperately put me off a life in theatre. It was fair enough, because they didn't know anything.
No, I wanted to ask one of the first kind of thoughts around regrets. Do you regret not pursuing a career in science still?
I don't know. I don't know. I might have been a pharmacist. I might have been kind of doling out kind of paracetamol. I don't know what all these kind of dioxymethazone things that you give out. No, I don't. I guess my sister. That's what my sister did, and so because I was a little bit cleverer than her, so they just assumed I'd go on and be a pharmacist, and I think it was fair enough, really. But I didn't really apply myself I didn't go very often to school, to college, sixth form, and so, which is not like me. I was very good at school, but sixth form, I felt like, well, it's just the same. I just was really disappointed that it was so similar, and that there was. I thought it'd be more parties and more kind of, And I remember I never used to go on a Thursday to physics because I'd been out in a club on the Wednesday night, Peppermint Park, which had a half rockabilly, half kind of independent night. And so there was lots of like, you'd have the Smiths, and then you'd have some bit of rockabilly rebel song, and we'd all dance to each other's, and everyone was dressed up, and there's a bit where the bouncers would come and sing an Elvis song. And that was the kind of night. And so I was just hungover, so I didn't go on. I just told my mum I had free lessons on a Thursday morning and didn't go on.
So Peppermint Park was the place to be midweek.
Was the place, the only independent night in Stockton. Just
Stockton, of course, yes. So when did you think, I'm going to try and go for it, I'm going to try and be an actor, I'm going to try and study drama? How did that happen?
I suppose it was encouraged through my, just kept doing youth theatre. I kind of came and I sort of assistant directed something over at one point, and then he just said, what are you applying for? And I just applied to Manchester and just didn't get in. It was so far from getting in at Manchester, and I came to Middlesex and was just so late. I thought I didn't want to get on the tube. The tube terrified me. I thought I can't get on the tube. I'll get a bus. And no buses. So I got a bus from Victoria to Golders Green, which took hours, and I was late. And I remember the librarian calming me down and me doing this audition, and they're making me.
What did you do for your auditions?
I did. What did I do for my auditions? I did a bit from The Long and the Short and the Tall by Willis Hall. Yeah. There's a bit of a guy from Darlington or Middlesbrough, someone who does a speech. So that's kind of quite easy. And I did and you had a choice of what to do, but they kept making me do improvisations where I was quite a posh gentleman. And I sort of realised that because my friend Nikki Boyce, who did it, they kept making her be a tramp. She's very posh. And so they obviously go for you. Can you do anything else apart from like this broad northern thing? And so, and then I sort of was worried about essays. I hadn't written, because I'd just done science. I thought I can't. And so they made me write an essay about a poem called The Crow. And so I wrote this essay, and it was like a very odd day. And then I got back on the National Express, and then I got a letter saying I was in. So it was just, that was the only place I got into. So I was just lucky, and I needed something like 2 E's to get in there, and I got a D and an E. Luckily, I did
you surpassed the qualification.
And a lot of people who did much better than me didn't get into where they wanted to, but I meant I could celebrate. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because we have lots in common. One of which I think is that we were kind of both the members of our family that kind of went away from home. In my case, Birmingham. And I remember, of course, following you the year later into Middlesex. And
86.
Of course, I maybe I was a little bit bolder on the tube, but I think I shared the same nervousness. And I remember I was thinking about this morning, your year group, when I first turned up, and I can see my memory of you looking quite like a kind of, funny you mentioned Craig and Bentley, like a kind of mix of something quite period, almost quite 1950s, but with a kind of Bowie-esque, Smiths-esque kind of vibe going on. It was
it's quite a few goths.
Was that conscious, that style that you'd fashioned?
I don't think so. I just used to wear a Mac all the time, and people were quite trendy, and people were quite excited. Like Tony Davis would often dress up for dinner and bring in a glass of wine. And for his lunch, he'd have, with his cheese toasty, he'd have a kind of glass of wine and a little. And so there was quite an eccentric year out. I think we were quite. I think you a lot were a bit more. Well, I don't know. You had a few eccentricities, didn't you? But I think you did. Those kind of courses do attract a sort of an eccentric bunch of people. And I probably was one of them as well. Like I was sort of trying to define myself, really, because I was like so reliant on my family and friends who were like bubbly and had lots of energy and would talk lots. And I was a good listener. Everyone would say I was a good listener, but then you can't just go and listen, can you? I just had to kind of step out, and it was a bit of a professional northerner, and but I just moaned about how expensive everything was. But I just because I put myself out there, you make friends really quickly. It's quite defining. I think you're just thrown in, and those early memories they stick with you, don't you? And they're just great.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I didn't realise quite. I thought, you have an idea of what drama school thing is, and then suddenly all being thrown in, not your year and our year in that one little space in Hampstead. And then I suppose meeting you and going to the pub and feeling a connection and everything. But then I suppose also the big link for me with you, and a big figure for all of us, not all of us, but those people who were into it, was obviously John Wright's work. And you had obviously gone the year before us with John, and I remember you telling us about him. And a vivid memory of mine was us as first years watching your second year production with John, where you said, we're doing this clown show. And I remember me and Hayley, I didn't have any idea what clown was. I thought, what do you mean, what, the circus? Yeah. And you'd go, no, it's not like the circus. It's not like big feet and everything. And then you put this wedding on, this clown wedding, in that little theatre at Ivy House. And I remember coming in and John was sitting in the auditorium with that massive drum that he would hit, 3 times. On the third time you were out. And I just remember you being absolutely hysterical, leaping around the stage as the gazelle.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I'm getting to is, how would you describe John's influence on you as a performer?
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, like we all say, I wouldn't be here because he just because I was really into plays. I wanted to go and do plays and read plays, and I was kind of obsessed by it. And then he just said make something up, and I was like going. And that's the thing about it's the joy of doing something, and then people laughing, and then going, oh, I've got this, I've got them. And then him provoking you further and then making it harder for you. And you felt like you were on, I don't know if I consciously felt like I was on a journey, but it was something that connected. And, and there's a few of us in our year who really liked it, and some people who were terrified, but I was sort of a bit frightened, but in just that great way, like just before you go on stage, that nervous energy, it just which I didn't really feel for some of the other classes. I was a bit like, it seemed a bit mundane doing voice and things. It felt very technical, but this was like discovering stuff. And I thought, and it was all new. I just never heard of it. I was like, I'd seen one company when I was 16 called Teatr Blick, this Polish company, which was at Stockton at the Ark, which is we was at the Dove Cut, called the Ark now, and they were doing the similar thing. And I suddenly went, this is what they were doing. I suddenly get it. Big, bold visual images, clowning directly at the audience, like they were flirting with you. And I just remember that's something I really like, that. And that kind of boldness and that kind of, it just sounds, just, like I said, joyful, that kind of thing when things connect together. And also, but that kind of, and then the next day, just absolutely falling on its ass and just kind of going, I haven't got any idea what I'm doing here. Because
But I suppose if I think back to that time and watching you in that show for John and with your friends and stuff, and then it just felt, and it's always felt this when I look at you from a clown point of view, it felt, as you say, you can fall on your ass one moment and fly the next, but it always felt that it was something natural to you. Do you know what I mean? I know that's maybe overused sometimes, a natural clown, but it did feel natural, right? From that, is that how it felt to you or not?
I think so. I mean, it wasn't like, I just thought about it lots. It just seemed natural to kind of work at it. So it's that, I suppose that's how I'd kind of qualify it a bit, because it wasn't, I didn't just go on and be funny. It wasn't like that at all. I had to kind of think about it and I got a bit obsessed by it. I really did. A few of us did, but I really did. And would kind of, like the thing about having a packet of crisps down my underpants, I'd just have them ready there and very rarely use them. But no, at some point I could just go crunch and get a laugh. It was like a little rescue device. Remember John said rescue device at one point. Just you'd have something up your sleeve just to kind of change the rhythm. And so people couldn't believe it. I said, oh, did you just put them in today? And I was like, no, I've had them in the last 3 weeks, and so just in case. I'm
now thinking of obviously very illustrious performers like Simon Russell Beale and people like this, what their rescue device would be. But I don't know why it's gone there. But I think it's brilliant that you had the crisps in your underpants for some time.
Yeah, I just didn't put them in surreptitiously just in case. I had the idea. I thought, I'm going to have it. I've got something. And then I just had like a series of successes. So you kind of don't want, you don't have to go.
Don't need your rescue device.
Don't need it.
Don't go to your rescue device when you don't use it.
No, that was, again, if it's a natural thing, some things you instinctively understand. I know some people would go straight.
You don't need teaching really about that, do you? Anyway, obviously you and I and a whole bunch of brilliant friends came together in that time. Lizzie and Haley and Mick, of course, in your year, and we hung out, and we ended up sharing houses and all that stuff. And then, of course, you left, and then I then left, and that feeling. I was thinking back to this when I went to work at that pub in Kentish Town, and you used to come round there, and we'd all hang out there desperately trying to get a profit share show somewhere.
No, because I was in Vagabond Bags around the corner with your...
Yes, you were. You worked at the bag shop with Pat.
With Pat. And she'd come and have 4 pints on her lunchtime. And then take
not
4
just
cans.
4 pints. Not just 4 pints, but strong lager.
Strong lager.
4 pints of strong lager at lunchtime.
And then
take cans back.
Yeah, 4 cans back. She'd have 4 in the afternoon. And I'd come and have a pint.
But you always spoke quite... my memory is you always spoke quite kindly of Pat. That she looked after you. She looked after me, really, because she recognised I was... Because some people turn up and were late, one of those things. I wasn't lazy. I just got on with it, and I was tall, so I could reach things, and so I was useful. So, and you just have to get on with those things. And there was lots of like Spanish people and different people, all kind of a broad variety of people. We just kind of said it's much better if you do the work and then you get on with it, and then everyone's happy, and you just realise that. And when she was barred from having her 4 cans of lager in the afternoon, we all went, you can't. We had to kind of go, obviously we're not going to strike, but it seems like she's doing all right. That's I
what
quite
she
like
does.
the fact that you and the Spanish got behind Pat, and after her 4 pints in the pub, she was being victimised for the 4.
No, because I said she only ever has a pint in the pub, and she was looking at me like, oh yeah, good one, yeah, let's go with this. And
I imagine the cans would probably be strong, like Kestrel or something.
Oh yeah,
like
it was like, that's that Skull Extra, or that kind of
yeah, it wouldn't be the Carling.
No,
anyway, that's enough of Pat.
Yeah.
And that era, of course, when we were all trying to get going, and then very fortunately, after a couple of years, I managed to get a break with Trestle. And my memory, again, brilliantly supported by John. John said, they were doing some auditions, because Trestle, those listeners who don't know, were a wonderful British masked theatre company that John co-founded. But in typical John fashion, he said, they're doing the auditions. Go along. I'll recommend you. And when I got there, of course, he'd forgotten to mention it, so no one knew I was turning off. But of course, you followed into Trestle shortly after me. And it's easy to think of, that was a big time of lots and lots of touring. But I remember looking back as a performer, on reflection, it was brilliant to work in mask at the start of starting out in acting. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a good training, and also it's good. I don't know, that kind of, you get a practical doing a show after show, working out how to kind of travel, how to get on with people, how to then get ready, warm up for the show, do the show consistently, and also kind of trying to have a bit of fun with it, because it does get a bit. It can, for me personally, it took me a while to learn the show because it's so complicated. But once you've got the show, you could easily drift into But luckily, I was with people who were always kind of interested and were trying to change things and saying, "Can we work on the timing of this?" And I was always really up for that. I was like going, "Oh, are we allowed to do this?" And they'd kind of come in, and even the direct Sally would come in and go, "Let's time that a bit better." And so it felt like it was just good practice, really. And for all the kind of the fact that the history, they did some really great shows and that were really popular. It was really popular. That was good. I mean, I really liked the fact that you'd go to Dublin and people couldn't believe there was a piece of theatre with no words in, where they understood everything, they laughed at everything, and they got it. And because it's such a literary culture, and and then you could go to top of Scotland. I just went, we went all around Holland, and so you get to see a bit. And so
I agree.
Yeah.
And also that thing as an actor, I think everybody in a way would benefit from a period of time when you're not speaking on stage. I think that discipline of having to work without language, I think was, even now, 30 odd years later, making the Charlie Chaplin Stan Laurel show, I found myself, even though we weren't working in masks, I found myself remembering certain things from the Trestle
internal
days.
monologue things. Yeah, no, I think it's useful, because there will be a bit where you haven't got anything to do on scene. You see people, because they haven't got any text, they switch off a bit, and I like a bit of text. So I was desperate to speak and pull faces and get that mask off and stop being so, because it becomes a bit of a claustrophobic thing. And I even did something just last summer as part of Worthing Theatre Trail. There's a little theatre thing, and I did some mask things with our friend Abigail, and I said, I'll go on for a bit. I'll get me up. And you provoke it, and I hated it so much. It brought back such the reason why I went, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be able to kind of be. It's a bit of I think it's a bit of a safety device in some ways, but also it releases you to a certain degree, and then some point it kind of doesn't, and you kind of go.
I think also that sense of anything for too long in theatre terms, you need. And I certainly, and this partly I think was behind the very beginnings of Told by India, and as you know, that our year at college with John, you did clown and we did commedia, and I didn't know what commedia was, but it was the single biggest influence, I think, on the way I look at performing, writing, making, and I think that energy of commedia has always been at the heart of Told by an Idiot. And I remember I was thinking about all the brilliant shows you've done for us over the years, and that first one when you came into I Weep at My Piano.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd done it originally at the Lorca Festival.
Yeah, with
Newcastle,
Darren.
And then Darren, I think, was having thoughts about show business in general. So we had to recast for the tour in London. And Haley and I thought, well, Steve's kind of perfect. And I think it was also that sense of, I don't think we'd worked together properly. We'd done some sketch things like Darley and Lorca, and we'd done a street show, of course, in Portobello Market with Joey. But it just felt such a perfect fit when you joined us. It just felt like, well, this is exactly the type of performer, as we started to bring different performers in. And then,
it's
of
great.
course,
It's great to meet like Dickie and Naomi and
Ian on that show.
Ian's kind of with the music, which is not my forte. I spoke about it again just last year about him when he first met me, and he was like going, you couldn't do anything, you couldn't clap in time, you couldn't do. Desperately trying to think each night. I'd go, I'm scratching my head, why is this guy in here? And then suddenly, and you kind of, and then the other stuff was it was really lovely.
I also like that. I like Ian's honesty of literally going, well, you can't do anything. What are
literally can't clap, keep a beat. But so it was kind of it's that kind of challenge, isn't it? No, I felt like I'm not struggling with the order, because I wasn't sure if we did what was the first.
No, you're absolutely right. That wasn't the first. I've got my own order wrong. No, you joined first for Don't Laugh, It's My Life.
Yeah. So we did that, where we did all the R&D in Bridport and all the kind of stuff.
And your eldest son was born?
Yeah, was he? He was
during the January of
course he was. Ridiculous, because we particularly we chose, because he was breech, we went for a cesarean, a selective cesarean, so we could have it on the Monday night, because I think we got Monday nights off.
That's right.
And so it meant I could. I remember on the Sunday, leaving you and Haley and Leah and all those people, Rick Katz, and I think Jane Gurney had come to see the show, and you're all kind of tried a little half a Guinness. It's the only drink she had over that, because just it was happening the next day, and we knew we'd be parents.
And that also, I think, of a crowd of us, you were the first to become.
I think so. Yeah.
So I think for all of us, I think Richard Katz was the same time with Martha, wasn't he?
April 1st, actually. So they were pregnant at the same time. Yeah. So
that's right. But I remember, of course, on that Monday, then you'd been to the hospital and coming to see you, it was an extraordinary thing that suddenly one of our gang was. And I remember at that time thinking, God, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah,
but obviously I did. That's another story. And then, of course, you went on to be such a regular idiot and such a brilliant part of so many companies. And I think about so many memories, but one in particular, a show that, and actually, there's a photo on the wall behind me that you might, I don't know, be able to see. I'm just going to move. You can see it, yeah.
Now I've got
you and Haley.
It's upstairs.
It's you and Haley in one of my favourite idiot shows of all time, which was I'm a Fool to Want You, which is when we met the brilliant jazz pianist Zoe Rahman. And it was a show that was very close to my heart, because on one level it was about jazz. And I'll talk about jazz and you and me and jazz in a minute. But that show was so special, and we managed, as you say, do it in London. And we brilliantly invited to the Theatre Festival in Caracas, Venezuela, where we we worked with a young Wilfredo, a young Venezuelan trumpet player. But I remember the opening night in Caracas, and it was packed, 700 seats, an amazing reaction. But of course, it was incredibly hot and altitude and everything. And then I remember being collected by the head of the British Council and various dignitaries from the festival, congratulating me, saying, we'd like to congratulate the actors. And I led them backstage, and we were talking. So the first thing they encountered was you in your underpants with your head in a fridge. And
so hot. It's kind of 100 degrees Celsius on stage, so it was really hot. And Haley kind of went, put your head in the fridge. You're gonna pass out. You're gonna have heat stroke.
Luckily there were no crisps inside the underpants. You didn't need to rely on them. On that particular show.
Those times were gone. Yeah.
And then of course, you've gone on to work with amazing people and companies, and Probable and Warhorse. And I have one memory of Warhorse amongst many, but obviously you were there at the very beginning. You were there at the National, you went into the West End, you were there for a long time and saw many casts and played many parts. But I do remember messaging you when I realised that you'd actually been in the show longer than the war itself.
No, that was significant. And I was carrying quite a few injuries there. So I had my war wound, I'd kind of done my knee in, I had to do a very careful version of the show because I couldn't run forwards because the pressure on my knee would kind of just put such a lot of strain because it's this rubberized floor. Amazing set and design, but it was quite tough on the actors. And but I could run backwards, and that's what I did in there's the head of the horse. I could run backwards because it was the less strain. So they cut me from some of the early puppets, but I just did the kind of puppets that I was necessary for, and I could really go for it. It didn't, and I had some padding, and I was also acupuncture and all this kind of stuff to kind of I didn't have any painkilling injections, I don't think, but it was close to that. And so I remember I was coming to an end then. I was like thinking, I can't. I've got another one of these in me because that'll be it. I'll just have to retire. Just put me in a bed. And then knackers.
And also my other Warhorse memory was when it was the Jubilee before the Queen, not this one, the one before,
10 years ago,
when she went down the boat on the river, and you were operating one of the horses on top of the National Theatre. And the bit that made me laugh, you said this as well, but you could see it on TV. She was clearly quite bored on this boat until an aide put her arm on her and said, "Oh, look, Mum, there's Warhorse." She looked up and saw the horses, and her face lit up.
But I think it's that vertical.
Did the Queen come and see the show?
Yeah, she came to see the show. Yeah, we didn't see her afterwards, and she left a bit early, and she sat in the same seat as Barbara Windsor. So that was like Barbara Windsor was in the weekend after. So it was like we're going, that's they get the same seat, and they also they'll get escorted out just before during. I think that we saw her leaving during the curtain call, just so she can leave nice and easy. Because all the others came, and they like Princess Anne came and hung around and told us that very early on said that it was brilliant, but she thought the noises weren't right. And so we were called in the next day to kind of do horse noises. But it was true, but she was right. Yeah. So, she knows the horses.
She'd know about that.
Yeah. And so we met a few of them.
And then another big thing which I wanted to touch on while we chat is our shared love and passion for jazz, which goes right back to us meeting and me playing you some albums and going off when maybe both of us were still at college in various pubs around North London, and that passion and joy for music, for jazz, stayed with us.
Like recorded and live. I think we would listen to a lot. You had like great jazz. I keep trying to find it. Jazz giants play classic love songs, but there's so many albums called that. It's got a great version of Love for Sale on it, and the
Unknown Session,
Sessions with the brilliant cover of the Ellington with the kind of the grand piano covered in brown paper and string, and it's just beautiful. It's got me and Joe at our wedding. We got which were our best man for. We played there's a song called "In a Sentimental Mood," which is a beautiful song, which we danced to, which kind of occasionally comes on my playlist on my Spotify, and it's just really.
And I think more recently, like obviously the Joy the other month, you, me, and Martin and Sophia going to Love Supreme, but I also particularly loved last year going with you to see Charles Lloyd, the extraordinary saxophonist at the Barbican. That gig in particular stayed with me. Steve, it's been brilliant chatting to you. I'm going to end like I do with lots of my guests, where I'm going to ask 8 quick-fire questions which connect to your life in some way. And you won't have any trouble with this spontaneity, and you won't need your safety relief for this at all. I'm slightly overplaying that now. So I'll say, you say the first answer that comes into your head, chicken madras or lamb dansak?
Lamb dancer.
This is about a theatre company we both loved called The Right Size. Moose or Stop Calling Me Vernon?
Stop calling me Vernon. Just.
Venice or Reykjavik?
Oh, that is a hard one, but I'd go Reykjavik.
Crime and Punishment or Moby Dick?
Crime and Punishment.
Is that because of the whaling section in Moby Dick?
I think so. I never finished Moby Dick, so I always get through the bit where it's the whole bit where they describe all these whales. It goes on for ages. And I kind of go. I never read the ending. Seen the film, so I do know it.
Snooker or pool?
Pool, just again.
John Hegley or Jeremy Hardy?
John Hegley.
Young Americans or Life on Mars?
Life on Mars. Because we saw it was part of the jazz festival. She played a version of the lady.
Indeed. Down by Law or Babette's Feast?
Oh, that's a very good one. Down by Law. Yeah. I'm actually going to see. I'm going to pictures tonight. I'm going to go and see Wings of Desire. Wim Wenders is on it a lot.
Wow! So yes, it's come out again. Is it playing at your local?
Yeah. So that's great. And and the Paris, Texas on next month. Yeah. So we booked tickets this afternoon. So it's me and Joe got a date night.
You will have a great time, Steve. It's been brilliant chatting to you. I just wanted to finish by saying, you know this, but there are so many people out there sending you and Joe and the boys so much love. And I will see you very soon.
Yeah,
I'll come down and see you there. Game
Please
of snooker,
do.
perhaps.
Yeah, no.
Or pool.
Yeah,
you prefer pool?
No. I think I'd like a game of snooker with you, but it's always quite good to go on to snooker and then finish with a game of pool because it feels a bit easier.
And the pockets look like
the massive
buckets then, which is perfect. Steve, take care, mate.
Cheers.
Enjoy the movie.
Thanks
All the best, mate.
Cheers, Paul. Bye.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please spread the word